Hey, it's Lee. Welcome to Business Problem Solved. Today, I have the immense pleasure of chatting with a young gentleman who I have followed on LinkedIn for a while. I've seen what he's been doing, and I'm well excited to understand a little bit more about it. Mr. Jared Thatcher. You may know him of virtual Lean Summit fame. But he's also got a day job as well, which I'm sure we will get into as well. But Mr. Jared Thatcher, how are you?
I'm brilliant. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. So in fact, actually, before we get into the virtual lean summit, and we talk about that, what is it you do during the day, and how did you get into it? What's your story?
Wow. I was born in Portland, Oregon, a few years ago. So I appreciate you calling me young. That's great. But yeah, I right now we'll skip forward and then probably go back. But right now I work for the Port of Seattle as the Continuous Process Improvement Program Manager.
Did you choose that title?
No. We shortened it on our business card because that's too long, to the CPI Program Manager. But what we do is we help the organization to really embrace lean thinking, to go ahead and think differently. And when I say the organization, the Port of Seattle has been around since 1911. It is a government agency, and it was founded and created to help maintain good trade practices within industry around the world. So we have port facilities for the big, huge cargo ships that come in that we have as a joint venture with the Port of Tacoma. We have different docks, marinas, things like that for like the ships as they go out and do fishing, as well as a marina for pleasure boats. We also have the Port of Seattle, or the SeaTac International Airport, and it is mostly there that I work. So what we do is a lot of different things, and I think that's actually one of the most interesting things about my job, is because we are a government agency, we do work with so many different companies and the general public, for that matter, especially with flying now that we're starting to get back into it after COVID. I have the unique opportunity to work on projects not just within the different departments here at the Port of Seattle, but also with different companies. So I've run projects where we've worked with like United and Delta and Alaska and Hawaiian Air, as well as some of the below wing companies like Swissport, who do the fueling, or Delta Ground Services, or WFS, these people that go ahead and unload the planes for us and refuel them and get them turned. And so it's unique where you're pulling in a bunch of companies to work on lean process improvements. And I think there's very few people in the world that actually have that opportunity to be able to not just work cross-functionally with different departments, but also to work cross-organizationally with different companies. So that's kind of what I do. It's really about helping people. It's about helping the customer to have a better experience with our processes. It's also about helping to reduce the frustrations that our people feel as they're going through and having issues and having things come up with the process that's not working for them, or it takes too long, and that sort of thing.
Got you. So before, in fact, actually, I'm not sure which way to go. In fact, we'll just talk about this, just your current role, just for a minute. There's How do you, in fact, what I put a post on LinkedIn the other day that said the secret of problem solving is problem finding. And we're in this game where people get trained in problem solving, and the tools, the techniques to solve problems, but not very many people are taught how to find problems systemically, that and then capture them and all of that stuff. So I believe the secret of problem solving is problem finding, and what you've just spoke about there is about a load of different projects where you're going to pull some major players together to work on these projects and programs to make it better for the customer. How do you get or to identify the project? Is it something that is it because something as fundamentally broken that it requires it, so it's firefighting, or is there something within your processes that daily you are finding these things all along? Can you just talk me through the difference of those?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of ways that we get projects and the way things come up. So part of it is firefighting, right? I mean, that's, I would say typically those are the bigger projects. Those are the ones that, hey, we had something happen, right? There was some major incident that occurred that we realized all of a sudden we're vulnerable to something. So we need to fix this and we need to do it now. And there's also those issues that have just been kind of ongoing that, it's like, you know what, we just have to do something about this. We're tired of doing these workarounds. There's got to be a better way. But sometimes it comes from coaching. It comes from helping people to, like you said, be able to see that there is a problem they may not realize, right? They just think, oh, that's just the way it is. And realize, well, just because that's the way it is doesn't mean you have to be satisfied with that. So a lot of what we do is teaching. A lot of what we do is helping people to be able to see and really understand how processes work. I mean, a lot of people, when you say processes, that, what are your processes? They're like, I don't have processes. And it's like, no, you have processes. You really do. It may change each time because you don't have it standardized, but you do have a process in order to go from point A to point B. And helping them to see and understand the different types of what we call in lean waste, right? Those different things that really, if you were to eliminate those or reduce those, it would help the entire process to be more streamlined, to be more effective, to be more efficient. And so helping people to see those things is critical. And Lee, to your point, I think you're right to go ahead and say that having, how do we put it, being able to go ahead and identify the problem, get to that root cause is important. But I think even more important than that is being able to have a critical eye in asking questions and asking the right questions, and sometimes asking stupid questions. And that's something that I learned as a management consultant. And so we can probably skip back now. We have that.
Yeah.
Thing. Okay, we're having the transition here. All right, so I actually started off my career really young. The first 20 years of my working career, which makes me sound really old, but not so much. I actually started working when I was 12, and the first job I had was actually my mom woke me up one summer and morning, and she said, "You're going to earn your own money for summer camp," and she took me out like some early, I don't know, like 5:30, 6 a.m. It was crazy. It's summer. I shouldn't wake up that early.
Yeah.
And she took me out to the strawberry fields, and she dropped me off and said, "Okay, here's some money. Go ahead and pick as many strawberries as you can, and we'll turn around and sell them to the neighbors." Okay, so I went ahead and I worked for several hours and picked strawberries, and then we went and sold them to the neighbors. And then I took the money that I earned from that, and I used that to pay my mom back, and then go out and do that over and over and over again. And so it only took about 2 weeks to earn the money for summer camp. And I decided I did not want to be a farm worker. Instead, I ended up going out that school year, and every day after school, I would go and walk probably about the 1.5 miles to my dad's office. He had a steel fabricating business, and I started sweeping the floors. And then I started running blueprints. He had this construction business, and so eventually I decided that I wanted to learn all aspects of that. So I ended up, getting into construction and really working construction for the next 20 years. About half of that with my dad's company, and then the other half going off on my own, working for other people, as well as starting my own business as well. So that's kind of how it started. And at a certain point, probably when I was working road construction, and I realized that people could get killed doing this type of work. You know, you're working on the side of the road and cars are driving by at 65 miles an hour. You know, it's and they're 3 feet from you. You
Yeah.
know, and yeah, this is not the office environment I want to work in. So at that point, I decided, well, you know, maybe I should go get my MBA, break into you know, corporate business, and I hear that's kind of fun. I'm not sure who I heard that from. I should probably slap them next time I meet them. But went and got my MBA, and so I went to the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Figured if I'm going to study international business, you know, makes sense to study internationally.
Yeah.
So I went there, had the opportunity to do 1 term abroad. Not that I wasn't already abroad, but we went from Edinburgh down to Barcelona, Spain, to AIOTA Business School, and spent 1 term down there. So it was absolutely a fantastic, you know, opportunity to make that transition from working construction, you know, being a project manager, being an estimator, you know, being a drafter and detailer and iron worker and you name it. And so made that transition. Just a side note, we happened to go to Barcelona about 3 days before my wife and my 10th anniversary. And so I told my wife that I was taking her to Spain for, you know, for 3 months as a anniversary present. Lee, don't ever set the bar so high that you have a lot to work up to. So, you know, the next year she's like, okay, so what are you doing this year? It's like, no, this is like a, you know, once a decade thing. And I kind of lucked out. Our 20th anniversary hit, and we were in the middle of COVID, so we can't go anywhere. But I owe her. So. My first job after going ahead, and it was really a bad time because I started my MBA in 2008, and the day I started school was the day after Lehman Brothers collapsed. So we had all sorts of just interesting, you know, headlines in the paper: crash, the end is here. You know, my personal favorite is how the masters of the universe ran amok and cost us the world. So that was the day I started school. It's like, oh, this is brilliant. And then when I graduated, it was tough. It was tough finding a job. I had a work visa in the UK. We looked for a little while. I couldn't find anything. Decided, well, let's go back to the States. Went back to the States, and it took me about 6 months. Well, actually, from the time I got back to the States, about another 4 months to go ahead and actually find employment. And that was at Daimler Trucks North America. And I happened to be the first person they had hired after they had had a hiring freeze for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And so it actually took a little while they kept on leading me along, like, just one more interview, and found out that they'd already made their decision, but they didn't want me to take any other jobs. And so they were waiting for Germany to approve them hiring in the US. Got that approval, and I started. And I started off in their continuous cost improvement group, working with a bunch of consultants, and ended up moving into a special project team where we rolled out lean to the indirect side of the business, to the office side. So working with McKinsey Consulting, we ended up working together, and we rolled out in these waves in each department. So we'd spend about 4 months with a department, teaching them about lean, helping them to tackle their biggest process and look for improvements, and then setting them up to continue to do that after we left. And then we'd go on to the next group and continue to do follow-up with those different departments. And so I did that until I was recruited by Slalom Consulting, and I worked for them. And that's where kind of the consulting side came up, and I'll talk about some lessons learned there in a second. But I got to work for some really great companies: Nike, Mercy Corps, Standard Insurance, Portland General Electric. So a lot of different industries, a lot of different companies. But one thing about consulting, you're not treated like part of the company. You're not treated like part of the family, kind of like that crazy cousin or uncle or something like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of missed feeling, like I belonged. So I ended up taking a job at Alaska Airlines, worked for them for 2 years. And unfortunately, they were going through a transition. They had just acquired Virgin Airlines, American, and they were a little top heavy with management. And so they let a bunch of people go, including all of my lean team, except for me. So that happened 8 months after I started. And then after I finished a big project for them, they weren't quite sure where to put me after that. It was like, okay, well, I don't have a team anymore really. And so I started looking around and I found this opportunity at the Port of Seattle. So that's kind of my work history and where I've been.
That's really, really interesting. The first question that pops into my mind there is after spending so much time in construction and then going into improvement and working in different industries and now finding yourself back in, I guess, large like construction type arena, which do you prefer? Is it construction that's inside of you? Is it improvement that's inside of you? What is it that you enjoy?
Well, Lee, that's a great question. My name, Thatcher, and as you know, being from England, my name comes from people that thatched roofs.
Yeah.
And you still have people that thatch roofs in England. So construction has always been part of my blood. My dad, most of my uncles, they all started construction businesses. I even worked for my uncle who had a finished cabinetry business. So I got to learn how to do fine woodworking. I got to learn how to build structural steel and build bridges and dams and high rises and you name it. Had another uncle that went off and started a road construction company, right? So I mean, I got this huge variety of stuff. My grandfather actually started with, I think he said $24. He started a construction business, a general contracting business, and it ended up being one of the largest general contracting businesses west of the Mississippi. And he actually had an airplane that he would get every other year, and he would fly around to the different jobs all over the country to check on the crews to make sure that they were doing the work and doing the jobs they needed to be doing. So it's been in the family for as long as we've had a last name. And I love building things. I love seeing that result, knowing that bridge is going to be there probably long after I'm dead and gone, right? You can see the efforts of your work, and I love that. But I also love people, I think, more. And so for me, continuous process improvement is that ability to help people solve problems, ability to help people really transform and change. And so I've gone into departments that have been, quite frankly, toxic and high turnover, and they're frustrated. They're frustrated with the processes. They're frustrated with each other because the processes aren't working. But they don't recognize that. They don't understand why it is that they're so frustrated. They're doing all this overtime. They're doing all this, this work, and it seems like they're not getting anywhere. And being able to go in there and help them, actually see what's going on in the processes, see where they could be more efficient, see where they can be more effective, and being able to help them change the dynamic, help them to come together as a team. I've had, people that literally started yelling at me, and I thought they were going to hit me as I'm trying to explain what we want them to do. And, then helping them to understand and see why this is going to benefit them. And then all of a sudden going from, having that hostile nature to all of a sudden being our biggest supporter. And, it's amazing to be walking down, the hallway a year later and have a guy, see me, walking past in the hall and come running out and say, hey, you got to come check out what we're doing. Remember that process that used to take us 3 days, 3-4 days a week to do? We can now do it in 15 minutes. Check this out, and they're happy. They're excited because they have the passion again for doing the type of work that they originally signed up to do.
Yeah.
And got rid of a lot of the waste, a lot of the monotony, a lot of the things that did not add to their fulfillment and enjoyment.
So have people always been important to you, Jared?
Lee, that's a great question. Yes, it's something I've always enjoyed, being around people, having friends. That said, doesn't mean that I wasn't bullied as a kid, right? I was taller than most of my classmates, so I was awkward and gawky and beanpole, and I had this passion for sharing. So I'll give you a good example. When I was younger, our next door neighbor, she had grown up on the Indian reservation. Her father had a trading post, and so she had all of these really cool Navajo, uh, artifacts, blankets, and just all sorts, anything and everything that you could imagine, from the Native American culture. She had it. She actually, spoke Navajo. She went to school with them, even though she was white. And so it was just really fun going over to their house and seeing all this stuff and having her tell the stories and all that. And so we had a unit where we were studying, Native American culture. And this was in 4th grade. And I ended up, telling my teacher about it. And so we actually did a field trip where we went over to their house. She made Indian fry bread. We, listened to stories, and she literally had this museum of all of this stuff that she had, acquired from her father and stuff down in her basement.
Wow.
And it was a fantastic, thing. And so for me, it's always, when I find something that's exciting or something that's new or something, that I learn, I love sharing that type of stuff with people. I love, seeing the enjoyment and the learnings and stuff with other people. So that's always been, part of my nature. And so, yeah, I love helping people. I love, doing that sort of thing. In fact, when I was 19, I went off and I served a 2-year mission for my church, right? So I ended up going to Japan. Yeah. And teaching people about, my love for Jesus Christ. And so went off and did that. And of course, for the first year, I did a lot of smiling because I had no idea what anybody was saying. And then one day it just clicked. It was like, oh, I get it. They speak backwards. And it's like, all these words I'd learned, all of a sudden, everything made sense. I could speak and I understood. And this was fantastic. 3 days later, I got transferred to the Navy base in Yokosuka, Japan. And I ended up speaking in English for the next 5 months, right? It was just the Lord's way to keep me humble. But yeah, I love sharing. I love working with people, and I love helping people.
And so thank you for that, Jared. And when we talk about when you've gone through your career, what things, I guess, if we just pick on the sharing thing, what's the best lesson that's been shared with you?
Best lesson.
Or even, and you can define best however you like. It could be most important. It could be the one that stands out. It could be however you want to define best. But yeah, what's one lesson that sticks with you that's been shared with you?
From a strictly employee standpoint, I think probably the best lesson was from my first manager that I had when I started working after my MBA. And Carlos, he ended up helping me as I was preparing for my first, performance review at the end of the year. And he taught me that it's important to be thinking throughout the year about all the different things that you do and how those are benefiting the organization, how those are benefiting your team members, how those are benefiting the projects and the responsibility that you have, and to create this portfolio that you can go ahead and present to your boss at the end. So it's like, help me help you by telling me, reminding me, what was it that you did that was great, right? And that might even be just reaching out to somebody that personally congratulate, say, hey, can you just shoot me an email, and let me know that. And then you have these endorsements from different people on the projects that you can go ahead and you can include in there. And so I started asking for recommendation letters from people. I started putting together kind of one-pagers about the projects that I worked on. What was the situation? What did we do? What was the result? And I have it actually, I might have put it away. Usually I kind of have it here on my desk, but I actually have a portfolio book that has, all the years I've been working since my MBA, where it has all of these success stories and all the different things that I've done that I can pull out really quickly and I can show people and be able to say, here's what I have. I even have $1 million bag. And so when I started working at Daimler, I was part of the continuous cost improvement. So it's kind of like applying lean, but looking for opportunity within parts, right?
Yeah.
How can we keep the same, form, fit, and function, and be able to save money? And I have all sorts of different parts, and almost every one in that bag, it was over $1 million worth of savings for the organization.
Wow.
And sometimes it was just like asking a stupid question, right? For example, there was a belt once, so these are timing belts, and a company had come to me, a supplier, and said, "Hey, really, hope you check out our belts and our pricing and look at that." And so as I was talking to our engineering group, they said, "Oh, well, they were super expensive." And I said, "Well, when and why?" And I said, "Well, about 10 years ago, when they first came out with this new, process, and what they did, instead of the typical way a belt is formed, is they extrude out all of the material, and then they have these blades that come in and actually dig out the grooves. So they remove about a third of the material to form the grooves for the belt. And they had an extraction process that would just extract it out with those grooves already, in the belt." And they're like, "Well, it was more expensive." And I said, "Well, have you looked at it recently?" And they're like, "Well, no." And I understood that when you first come out with new technology, the tooling and everything costs more for
Yeah.
the part. And over time, you pay off that tooling, and then you can lower the price. And we looked at it, and they were a third cheaper. And so that one, switch right there was $1 million savings, simply by asking the question, why? When was
Yeah.
the last time we did it? Are we sure that's still the case? And just asking literally stupid questions. They thought they knew the answer, and then as we looked at it, it was like, "Oh no, actually, it is cheaper now, and this is actually a better, product." And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And so I have those two things. I have my portfolio book, and I have my $1 million bag of parts.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I think it's so important to celebrate and remember and reflect on successes as well. And because there is a lot of focus on what doesn't go well or what doesn't go right. But I think what you've got there is a lot of celebration and reflection and lessons learned throughout everything that you've done. Love it. You've mentioned people, you've mentioned helping, you mentioned sharing. And at the start, when I introduced you, it was Mr. Virtual Lean Summit, which is all about people, is all about sharing, and is all about learning. Is that, I mean, is that as simple as it was for when you went, okay, I'm somebody who values people, who likes sharing and likes helping people, I'm going to create a summit? Or is there a story behind how you created the concept for what is now a massive event?
Yeah. No, I had no desire to go out and start this. In fact, what happened was, early days of COVID, we're coming out of that first lockdown, which we all thought was going to be, 3 to 6 weeks, right? So like, what was it? 4 months later, we're starting to come out of it, and it was like, I had a bunch of friends that had small businesses, and they were on the verge of bankruptcy. They were on the verge of, losing everything and having to lay off their employees, and it was a really awful time. And I felt really bad. I mean, I had a good job. I was able to quickly pivot and figure out how to do the process improvement work virtually. And we figured that out within about 48 hours of going into the lockdown. And so we were fine. However, I had all these friends, all these people that were struggling. And I knew if I could help them, help their employees to understand some of these basic concepts of what we do in Lean and what we do with this process improvement work, that it could help them to go ahead and quickly change their processes to meet the change in customer expectations. I mean, you remember those early days, people were afraid to go to the store because if I touch the doorknob, I might get COVID and I might die, right? So
Yep.
how can we go ahead and, alleviate some of those concerns, right? What can we do with our businesses to be able to help people? And the thought occurred to me, I don't have time, I don't have the resources to go ahead and coach people individually. I've got my full-time job. But what if I were to bring a bunch of experts together and we all talked about what it would take to bounce back and what we would do to help our business to weather the storm and to basically transform using Lean principles? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. but then it was like the only way to do that's virtually. And I did not know how to really use Zoom. We use Teams. And so, I didn't know how to create a website. I didn't know how to coordinate all this or to get the recordings, or I was completely oblivious. And so for a week, I tried to convince myself, this is a stupid idea. I don't know how to do this. This is dumb. And for a week, this idea just kept on staying with me. And so at the end of a week, and seriously trying to convince myself, this is dumb and I don't want to do this, and it wasn't going away. It's like, okay, well, maybe I should just do it. And so I went ahead and I set a deadline. I said 6 weeks from now, we're going live.
Wow.
And I ended up pulling in just over 20 people from around the world, some leading experts. We had people like Paul Akers with 2 Second Lean. We had Adi Anderson, Karen Ross, Michael Brimmer. Who else do we have? Daniel Markovitz. I mean, we had a whole bunch of folks that really are kind of leading experts in their field, and they all said yes. And so we ended up pulling this up, and it was great. And I was kind of thinking one and done. And then I started having people reach out to me. So I had some of the speakers actually, notice some of my content posts and saying, hey, I've been thinking about that thing. How would you address this? How would you solve it? It's like, well, this is kind of cool. The thought leaders are reaching out to me asking for my input. That's neat. And then I started having the people that attended. And that first year we had about 450, 460 people that showed up. And started having a bunch of them saying, hey, that was so great. When is the next one? I was like, next one. Okay.
Yeah.
So last year we did it again. And this time we had a little over 60 people from around the world, every continent except for Antarctica. And it was really well received. We had just over 1,500 people that registered and signed up to attend. And again, it was fantastic. And I think, Lee, the cool thing was that first year I probably lost $1,500 in the setup of all the technology and stuff. Some of that was sunk costs, some of that was ongoing. Last year I ended up doing it, and not only broke even, but also paid off the loss from the year before. So that was great. And what was really cool is I was able to keep it so that it's free for anybody to attend. So we have it live. We have it so that people can, watch the content, consume the content live. We have some pre-recorded episodes that they can watch for the next day or two. And then we take it down. And what we do to cover the cost then is we have an all access pass. We keep that price very low so that people can afford it. I mean, we had people in places like Vietnam and India and other places that were able to, to buy it. It's a low cost and be able to have access to it. And if you think about it, we had about the same number of speakers as some of the, the big lean conferences that they have in Europe and they have in the United States and Australia. And we were able to keep about the same number of people. And instead of having to pay, $1,000 or $2,000 to attend, and airfare and hotel and lodging and transportation, we were able to do it for free for people to really experience and learn from people that, for some places in the world, they don't have that opportunity to listen to that many people talking about a particular topic. And so it's been a fantastic way to give back to the community.
Yeah.
And help people to learn and to grow and to get the skills that they need to take their work and their profession to the next level.
Yeah, love it. I think it's immense value that you offer and share throughout the summit, and like you say, the resources there for people to go back at the leisure if they get the all access pass as well. So let's just talk about this year. Is there a theme this year? What is the theme for this year? How's it working?
Yeah, so last year's theme was around visual problem solving. And so what we did is each day we addressed a different methodology. So we looked at Lean and Lean Six Sigma. We looked at design thinking. We looked at storytelling and Agile and TWI and Toyota Kata. And so we ended up, looking at these different processes and these different tools and these different, methodologies for getting to the root of problems and being able to help bring people together to visually solve problems. This year, the theme is about going out and achieving a successful continuous improvement culture within your organization. And so each day we went from 6 days last year to 3 days this year. But those 3 days are going to have about the same number of speakers as we had in the 6. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to have a debate. We're going to have like a bunch of keynote speakers. We're going to have a forum where people talk about those themes. And each day is a slightly different topic. So the first day is about embarking on your lean journey. The second day is about establishing a lean culture change. And the final day is about embracing lean thinking. Because really, I think for those people that use lean, we want to move away from just this idea of tools, and we want to really move to the thinking. How do we get there? How do we solve the problem? It's not about which tool we use, but it's about how do we get to that desired final state? And so we want to move away from trying to implement lean, which is really doing lean to people. It's trying to force them to come along the journey with us. It's like pulling them. That doesn't work. We want to go ahead and actually should change that. It's not about pushing them into it, right? We know that pulling works a little bit better. Showing them the way, helping them to see the advantages of it. And so what we want to do is we want to move away from implementing lean to practicing lean. And we want people to be able to practice it, to be able to use it, to be able to share that with their teammates. And at the Port of Seattle, that's one of the great things that I see happening. We're finally making that transition from implementing lean to really practicing lean. And so we have several departments that are really starting to embrace it. And then we see other departments that are like, wow, how are you able to do that so quick? How are you able to solve that problem? How were you able to do that? And they're like, oh, come along on the journey, check this out. And so we're getting more and more people in the organization that are starting to embrace and try and use and practice lean thinking.
Do you think so I love that. I love the 3 days. I love the concept. I love what you're trying to do. I fully endorse and support that. I'm a big I say there's whether we use the L word or whether we use whatever improvement methodology that people navigate towards, it's fundamentally about increasing the number of thoughts in our people and reducing the time from thoughts to conversation to action, and as long as you're going in the right direction. I think so. It comes down to, you've said it a few times on this in this conversation so far, about asking better questions, and everybody asking questions, and leaders asking questions and stuff, and that's how you know that it's being practiced, because people are using are extracting and I guess pulling, as opposed to pushing on. Just really quickly about you, Jared, and your journey, because I know when I was first trained in lean methodology, and about 16 years ago, I was given some training, and I thought, why hadn't I seen this before? I thought it is going to change the world. And I went outside and pulled a whiteboard to the team that I was working with and said, you need one of these. This is going to change your life. And I was pushing, and I was met with like resistance in front of me. And I went on a bit of a journey after that of going from pushing and from introducing lean, to now what I believe is more practicing lean, and getting people to practice lean. Have you been on that journey yourself in terms of your own journey? And do you think that everybody has to go through that journey to get to the realization that I've had and what you've had? I'll pause there for allow you to answer any of the questions I've just asked.
No, Lee, I think those are some great questions. Here's what I would say. For me, I have gone on that journey. I have had these realizations and epiphanies that you can't force people to do it. And to me, it just seems so basic, and it seems so commonsensical that it surprises me when people are super resistant to it. And it's like, well, clearly I haven't explained this well enough, or I haven't shown the benefit of what's in it for you. I think there's a couple of thoughts that I had as you were talking there, but I think one of them is when I first learned about lean, when I first started, learning the principles, and it just resonated with me. And I think part of the reason it resonated with me is I've always been looking for that better way to do things. I'd always, figured that there's got to be something that I'm missing. There's got to be an easier, faster, better way to do this. And when I was a plant manager of a manufacturing plant, I had gone ahead and this is before I knew about lean. Nobody, there, had any idea about lean, but I actually implemented some lean techniques and some lean tools, and it was just stuff that I came up with, and I thought it was really smart. And then when I learned about lean and I'm, being shown these tools, it's like, oh, that was that thing that I ended up coming up with and doing, over here. And so it wasn't like I was the first person to create it, but it just made sense, which is why we ended up, using it and doing some of these things. So back to your question, yeah, I think people do have to go on a journey. They do have to, realize that you can't do this to people. And I think that's change management 101, right? If you try forcing people to do something, you're going to be hit with, such huge resistance. There was one team that I worked with, and I like to give this analogy. The team was so broken in terms of the processes and the way they were doing things. It didn't work. It was frustrating everybody. They were spending a lot of time doing rework. They were spending a lot of overtime, time on the weekend sometimes to fix things. It was not a good team environment. And there were 3 people on that team in the course of me working there for about 7-8 months that they actually left the team. Unbeknownst to me, they'd already accepted offers and they were leaving. And so I was hit with huge resistance because at that point they were so frustrated. They didn't even want to do anything to help the existing team because they were on the way out. They knew they were on the way out. And so I was hit with resistance. And so the first time I really realized it was when I was asking one of the managers to help me with, just answer a question. And he's like, well, I've been told not to talk to you. It's like, excuse me, I'm asking you one question. It should take about 1.5 minutes of your time. What do you mean? And they're like, well, we're so busy with the, trying to fix this thing, that's again, broken. We don't have time to, to work on this. And it was akin to me seeing the team in a car. They're going down the road at about 2 miles an hour. I can walk faster than they're driving because all of 4 of their wheels are flat. And I happen to have 4 wheels with me. And I'm like, hey, let's stop for a second. I'll show you how to change this first tire. And then you guys can change the other, 3 tires. And then you guys can go down the road at about, 65 miles an hour. And right now you're going 2 miles in an hour. We can go 65 miles. And it might only take us, 50 minutes to go ahead and, change all of these tires. But at the end, that still gives you 10 minutes, which means you're going to be able to probably go about, 10, 11 miles in that first hour versus 2. Let's do this. And the driver, who happened to be the director who was in the process of leaving, said, that sounds really good. Rolls up the window, tells everybody in the car not to roll down the window, not to get out and help. And we're in this journey together, and don't talk to this guy. And that's what it was like working for that team. And it was really, really frustrating. Once they left, guess what? Things changed. People were like, oh, now they're gone. Okay, what do we need to do? We were prevented working with you. We want your help now. And so we were able to get to that point where we were able to help them and to make the changes that they needed in order to really gain the improvements that help them to succeed, to help them enjoy doing that work that they originally, started doing. So yeah, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes there's things going on behind the scenes that you're not aware of until later. You just have to keep on trying and keep on, showing respect for people and trying to help them to understand how it's going to benefit them.
Completely. I'm conscious of the time, Jared. 3 really quick questions, if that's all right, because you've got a number of guest speakers you need to round up, and and all sorts of virtual lean summit stuff to sort. But question number one, really quick question, is what's the number one lesson that you have learned from setting up the virtual lean summit, or from hosting and facilitating and doing the virtual lean summit?
Yeah, I think my number one lesson is everybody has a story, kind of like what you're doing with this podcast, right? And so for me, it's not about getting just the A-listers, the people that always attend all of the conferences and are always speaking. They have a great story to tell, but oftentimes they're telling the same story over and over and over again, and you can probably recite it along with them while they're speaking. To me, what's really fascinating is trying to go out there and get people that are in the trenches, that are doing it, that are sometimes just starting out on the journey, because you can learn interesting things from people that are just starting out, because they're seeing things in a different light that maybe you've become jaded to, or that you don't see anymore. And so having that perspective, having people that have been doing it for years, that are actually experts, but don't like being in the spotlight, but they don't mind doing like kind of a, a one-off, presentation or something like that. So really it's people, you can learn so much from them. And so last year, almost every single presentation, it blew me away. The stuff that I was learning, the things that they were sharing, it was fantastic. And so I think that's my number one lesson.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Everybody does have a story. I did a series on this pod about a year ago that was called Real People, Real Stories, Real Value. And I got 11 or 12 people to come on week after week and just share their stories. And it was people who hadn't ever spoken before, but just about what they've done. It's so relatable. It's so real. I think, yeah, completely agree. Question number two. What does Mr. Virtual Lean Summit have for his tea? So tea is evening meal. What's your go-to? What are you having for your evening meal this evening?
Funny story there. When I lived in Scotland, we actually had a lot of people that would invite us over for tea. And you guys like your black tea. In my religion, we don't drink caffeinated black tea. And so we always politely thanked them for inviting us over for tea, and said, we don't drink tea. And it wasn't until almost, having lived there for 2 years, that we realized that what they were doing was inviting us over for dinner. And we felt really stupid. And like, just think of all those free meals we could have gotten. But anyway, tonight, I don't know. I mean, having lived in Japan, I'll make Japanese food. My wife is Armenian. So we sometimes will make Armenian meals. I love cooking. Lately, I've been on a cuisine journey of learning how to cook authentic Chinese food, and learning how to make kind of Szechuan dishes and stuff. And so I've been sucked in, thanks to my sons, into Instagram world. And so I've found like some pretty cool things about, recipe, hacks and how to do things. And so that's just kind of drawn me in. So most likely I'm going to try another Chinese recipe and see.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. You're a man of many talents, Jared. And lastly, final question. If people wanted to know more about you, if wanted to know more about Virtual Lean Summit, where would they go? What would they do? What would they find?
Absolutely. If you want to know more about me, I'm available on LinkedIn. So it's simply, Jared Thatcher, Jared, last name Thatcher. Virtual Lean Summit is just that. It's www.virtualleansummit.com. And when you go onto that page, you can find out more about this year's summit. We should have the registration up and running by the time this goes live. So we're just putting the final touches on that right now. And it's really cool this year, because instead of just doing the summit over those 3 days live, we're actually doing 2-week sprints, where we're doing day one, which actually started this week. And so we're doing the day one speakers for the next 2 weeks, and then we're doing the day two speakers. So when you register, you'll get an email letting you know about all of the pre-recorded sessions that we're doing, as well as the live sessions that we're going to be doing on July 20th, 21st, and 22nd, which is a Wednesday through Friday. And so it's going to be a great opportunity where you have a chance to actually interact in the pre-recorded sessions, and also then be able to watch those again when we go live in July. So yeah, www.virtualleansummit.com. Check that out.
Perfect. No, definitely. Jared, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, your lessons, and also just creating the virtual Lean Summit, which is hugely successful, brings immense value, and it comes back to those three things that you said before. It's all about people, it's all about helping, and it's all about sharing. So thank you so much from myself, Jared, and for everybody else that attends. And enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy whatever it is that you decide to cook later on for your tea.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lee.